There he is.
Hello and welcome. I was a little late, but I showed up. I didn't want to step on you if you were going to say it, so I hesitated for a second. Our producer AJ, Johnny on the spot, lost track of the time there a little bit. Apologies for the lateness. Better late than never. Peter Thomas, Florida Tal, back with you from the Brooklyn Bunker on this HorsePlayer Happy Hour. And it's been a heck of a day today, as I'm sure it has for you too, Matt Bernier, traveling up there north of the border. We'll bring you in officially, though. I'm PTF. We do these HorsePlayer Happy Hour shows once a week. Usually I get here before the credits start, not this week. And usually the man I'm about to properly introduce is sitting in an undisclosed location in New England. But he's moved north of the border. Very curious to hear about his travel plans. He'll be living up to his name this weekend on NBC Sports. He's TV's Matt Bernier. What's up, my man?
Yeah, I just rolled in and I think I got into the room like a minute before we were supposed to start. And AJ goes, "Do you want to start without Pete?" I said, "He's not here." I thought he was supposed to be covering for me. No, it's all good. You know, a good day. I shouldn't say a good day. Any day that you don't have any issues traveling, I suppose, is a good day. But
it's hard to argue.
I have some of those times, I don't know about you, where it feels like I am like Anthony Bourdain, where it feels like I've traveled. I know everything there is to know about ins and outs. And then there are other days that it feels like I can't even tie my own shoes. Today was somewhere in between the two, but we're here just getting settled in over about a past half hour and going to go see my buddy Nick Luck here shortly when we're wrapped up.
Oh, fantastic. That's right. I heard that he was making his way over, and there's certainly plenty of European raiders, English raiders, Irish raiders appearing on our shores this weekend. So it's a perfect weekend for him to be in the house. Please give him my regards. Look forward to seeing him. I don't know if it'll be at Keeneland or Breeders' Cup, but getting an opportunity soon for sure to see the great Nick Luck. You'll have to fill us in, Matt, on your broadcasting plans for over the weekend. We got a lot of Breeders' Cup winning you're in action. But when will you be on air? When can folks see you covering these races in real time over the weekend?
Saturday, we will be on from 5:30 to 6:30 on NBCSN. The Pattison Canadian International will be the first race. It's not a win and you're in, but it's one of the races that'll be covered. And the win and you're in on Saturday is the Woodbine Mile, which I think is I haven't done a deep dive into anything just yet. We'll get into that in a little bit, but I think that's a really fun race. You're going to have two horses that top the market that I think both you could make the argument are vulnerable at short price. So you could kind of get creative in there. And then on Sunday, we are on from 4:30 to 6. We will have, I believe, all 2-year-old races. You're going to have the Natalma in the summer, but also another 2-year-old stake to kick things off. So a lot going on up here over the next few days.
It's great. Definitely a key weekend of Breeders' Cup prep action. That Woodbine Mile definitely has the potential to sort things out for the Breeders' Cup Mile, and then the summer and the Natalma, major implications there as well. You said you haven't quite got the deep dive, but we'll definitely do some high-level analysis of the key storylines in the Woodbine Mile, and we might as well look at the International as well. 2 races I've been through. Woodbine, definitely one of the premier signals in the country all weekend. Some stakes action, Ontario Bred stakes action Friday, loaded card on Saturday, tons of coverage all over the In the Money Media Network. We've going to have an audio show with Jason Pertuando and Doug McPherson, sort of rapid fire, giving top picks in every race from those two, who I love working with, Matt, because you'll never see such a contrast in energies. And it's, as a host, it's just such a great pleasure dealing with Jason, who's one of the few people I think I can confidently describe as a more positive, high energy broadcaster than either of us. And then Doug, who's wonderful, but let's just say this, he's a little gruff and contrasts a little bit with Jason. Anyway, that's going to be a fun show. Drew and I go over Woodbine extensively on the late week show. There's tons of good stuff happening. We encourage you to check it out. And then there'll be some bonus content. Drew and I are going to do a special look at the late pick 4 on Sunday. And another thing, just from a pure gambling point of view, no Breeders' Cup implications, but there is also at Woodbine on Saturday night this nearly $300,000 force out in the Super High Five. And it's my first thought was it's an inscrutable affair. Of course, as a horse player, the more I look at it, the more of an opinion I'm developing. I think I am going to end up taking a little swing with that $300,000 being forced out into the pot. So this is HorsePlayer Happy Hour. We are this is the penultimate show of our regular season. We will still have 4 shows to come. That will be our playoffs after next week's finale. We're here to support charity. We are here to create a great deal for horse players with an extra $20,000 in prizes added through this interconnected contest. And maybe the best thing about this, Matt, as far as I'm concerned, is you could jump in. Today could be your first contest. You could have missed today and just come in this live stream, and next week could be your next contest. And you've still got a fair shot to get a crack at least this one extra BCBC seat that's going to be added as part of our playoffs. Give folks a little bit of a spiel about how this works here for HorsePlayers Happy Hour.
Yeah, look, we're at the very end, but to your point, that doesn't mean that you can't run in the top 2. And we've got 2 weeks left. If you finish in the exacta either of those weeks, you will punch your ticket to the postseason. That goes in inclusion to the folks who have already qualified via the point standings. And, David Browning's in pretty good shape right now, but it's not done yet. We're not totally home and hosed. So we've got the regular season BCBCC and then the winner of the playoffs, which will be whittled down week after week to a final table. Whoever emerges from the final table victorious, they'll also get a $10,000 BCBC seat. As always, these are also qualifiers to the Saturday Breeders' Cup Betting Challenge qualifier, which will come up Saturday afternoon. It's $179 buy-in. If you don't want to buy your way in, get involved here. You finish in the top 10% of the field on these happy hours, you end up getting into that as well. So this week, there are going to be 17 folks who will punch their ticket to the Saturday qualifier coming up this weekend, which I'm sure will involve some Woodbine racing. I can't imagine that it wouldn't. So many things going on. And as always, the juice goes to a good cause. It goes to our friends at TAA, TRF, taking care of the horses when their job on the track has come to a conclusion.
Very well put. I think I have the perfect guest who's going to pop in with us, I think after this Belmont race. And he's the perfect guest because he speaks to 2 of the things you were just talking about. He is the nearest pursuer to David Browning. Michael Domable is his name. You might know him from InTheMoneyPodcast.com and the phenomenal job he did covering Kentucky Downs for us over there. He's been a regular in these games. He's having a great season himself, but for this wild performance of David Browning's, he'd be the leader. But he's not giving up. He has a strategy he's been employing. He wanted to discuss that with us. But even better yet, Matt, he is emblematic of the idea that you can come in here any week for HorsePlayer Happy Hour, put up $20, and win through the traditional feeder into the qualifier, finish high up in the qualifier process. That $20 became a $10,000 Breeders' Cup Betting Challenge seat. He punched his ticket last weekend. So that was a story I wanted to tell as well. 3 reasons to bring Michael on. Hopefully we'll have him a little bit later in the day, in the show. And then the other fun thing about these shows is we want them to be as interactive as possible. If you're watching the YouTube replay of this, that's awesome. But we want you to join us live and interact with us. We'd like to give shout outs, answer questions, ask questions, all that good stuff. And with that in mind, we'll give Everett a gold star for being our first commenter today, who says hello from Lexington, Kentucky. Looking forward to being there in just a few weeks' time for the Keeneland contest. Lori checks in from Holiday, Florida. What a nice sounding place. We like to hear that. Wanda is here from Seminole, Florida. The Floridians well represented in the chat today. And then Joanne Corbin with our first racing-related question. How about those gun runner kids? I'd go to the second one, AJ. It's unbelievable. We're used to these first-year sires. They often, they have a lot of advantages in terms of marketing, right? Because they're very appealing to potential breeders because, of course, it's like a rookie in fantasy baseball or football. They haven't done anything wrong yet. You can pump a whole lot of blue sky into a first-year sire, and that you can market the heck out of them. And they get a lot of great mares to be bred to. So you'll often see them do well. But what Gunrunner has done with this assortment of babies, especially that little double he pulled the closing weekend at Saratoga, I can't recall a sire off to a start as good as Gunrunner. I'm basically upgrading them all at this point, Matt.
Yeah, and I don't want to blow up his spot at all, but our producer on the ground for these NBC shows, Greg Magruder, I believe his wife is involved with Three Chimneys, and he made the comment to me last Saturday before the races or before the show from Kentucky Down started. We were watching one of the races come by, and we were kind of setting up some other things, and he goes, "How about my guy Gunrunner? And how about the kids? They're all running. They're running fools." And I said, did you someone like me who doesn't really know what folks are looking for from like a conformation standpoint, and especially with the babies. I go, did you guys expect this? Did you think you would kind of hit the ground running? He said, the crazy thing is every one of them comes out looking, I think he used the term like a Ferrari. They all look like they're ready to run immediately. But then you talk to someone like Steve Asmussen, who apparently still has, I don't want to say the best of the best still to come, but apparently he's still got some really good gun runners in the barn that have not debuted yet.
It's a scary thought.
He said the crazy thing is Steve has said that he thinks they all want to go long. So for them, and I've used this kind of thing in the past, for horses to do things, or let's say pedigrees and a freshman sire to be having offspring do things that in reality they probably don't want to do. I think it bodes well going forward. You never know until, time will be the ultimate kind of test for things. But I don't know what else you could have asked for from a starting off point.
It's as impressive of a performance from a first year sire as I can remember. Now, granted, I've been a horse player since the mid '90s. I haven't followed the breeding industry, but for the last, I don't know, more like 7 or 8 years. But we'll at some point on one of our baby talk shows, we'll get Sean Tugel, our friend from Gainesway Farm, who sponsor that show, to try to bring in a little bit of perspective about some of the others. But no, it's been amazing. There's some great 2-year-old stuff this weekend, actually. I haven't really looked yet. We talked about the Natalma and the Summer on Sunday. There's also the Pocahontas and the male equivalent on
Iroquois.
The Iroquois, of course, on Saturday at Churchill Downs, with some good 2-year-old action. I haven't looked into that yet. I think we're going to have Nick Tamaro hosting a special show on the plus side of things on In the Money for those Churchill races Tuesday. But those are certainly races you're going to want to be paying attention to too, in terms of Breeders' Cup implications. I don't imagine you've had a chance to have a look at those Saturday Churchill races yet, have you?
I've not. The only thing I do know about the Saturday Churchill races is She Dares the Devil runs. So that's
there you go.
I mean, my pet horse is running. So
yes.
But I don't think it's a walkover for her though. There's some good fillies and mares lined up in that spot. En Vuitante is very good, and she's kind of the leader of the McPeak fillies and mares now that Swiss Skydiver's been put off on the sidelines for a little while, potentially retired, but still wait and see how everything shakes down. But there are some other talented fillies and mares in that race as well. So I initially was just hopeful it was going to be just a nice, easy kind of prep last race, get her ready for the Breeders' Cup. I think she's going to have to be ready to run if she's going to win.
I know you've got a great history with her, and you've been very good at predicting her along the way. So that's interesting to hear that little bit of trepidation with you as far as She Dares the Devil goes. Yeah, you mentioned Swiss Skydiver. She'll be going through that Night of the Stars sale. But you never know. We thought that was going to be it for Monomoy Girl when she went through the ring. She ended up coming back. We'll have to see. We'll have to see what happens. We've talked about her at great length before. I'm still not convinced she doesn't have another big race in her. I just don't think she's had the best circumstances to be shown to her best effect. I'm hoping we do get to see that at some point. Just neither here nor there. Really,
would you say if someone purchased her and they decided to go on with her for another year, how would you? Let's say you were the leader, you were the one who got to call what the campaign is. Would you be thinking about a full season, or would you be looking at it saying something like, "We're going to take a shot in the Pegasus, and that's going to be the swan song," kind of what I believe Stellar.
I think you got to build her back up. I think you got to build her back up. I think you'd go, if you were going to keep her in training, I think you'd circle the distaff next year and move back from there and try to find like some easier spots, honestly, where she doesn't have to worry about getting in, I don't know, say a speed duel with Nick's Go. I don't think that's going to be the recipe that brings her back into form. In terms of the specifics of where to start it off, I think time off would probably help, let her grow up just that much more. And then just try to find the right spots where you'll know pretty quick. I guess that's the problem, and why it probably won't happen is there is a non-zero chance I'm completely wrong. Her best days are behind her, and then you don't want to waste a year that she could be pumping out, an extremely impressive baby. But that just the racing fan in me wants to see them go one more time and see what we can come up with as far as that goes. We got 3 minutes to race 7 at Belmont. Let's quickly Quickly hop into a couple of more comments. Horse tickets. Glad Matt made it to Toronto. Lots of people wish they could be there. Enjoy it. I wish I were there. I'll say that much. Look forward to getting back next year. We got Marios from Greece. We love the international viewers. That's good. That's always good to see. Wayne Harrison talking about She Dares the Devil. Latrusk at 4-1. I'm assuming that means for the distaff. Playing 2 against the field, especially with Monomoy Girl out. I think Wayne is talking about the distaff for which She's the Devil, Dares the Devil is apparently 10-1. I mean, that's not nuts. Latrusk at 4-1. She Dares the Devil at 10-1. That's not a bad portfolio for that race because, Monomoy Girl, I mean, I just don't think we can count on seeing her. What do you think of 10-1 for your girl for the Breeders' Cup distaff potentially?
Well, salute to JD. Got to chat with him last weekend down at Kentucky Downs. I think he's back home in Arizona now. But there's another offshore sort of place, if you will, that has She Dares the Devil listed at 16 right now in the distaff, which to me, I feel like if you look at that personal ensign, you saw almost all of the distaff horses outside of Malatha and Maracuja. Outside of them, and assuming Monomoy Girl isn't there, I mean, unless you think one of the girls is going to bounce back and defeat Latruska from that personal ensign, which based on the way it was run, I can't draw that scenario up. Don't you have to look for, it's either one of the 2 3-year-olds or it's She Dares the Devil. And I don't know. I mean, I feel like I would rather find out at 16 that she can or can't do it than settle for, I've grown to really appreciate Malathat. She's still relatively young and inexperienced, but I think she's very, very good. But when I can get 3 times the price on a horse that's already won at Del Mar, the distance isn't going to be a problem for her. And by the way, she's the only one that defeated Latruska so far this year. I don't know. I mean, I think there's at least a not impossible scenario in which she wins the distaff.
It sounds very logical to me. And 16 certainly. I mean, that seems too big, honestly.
Yes.
You can grab that. Robert, hoping mine runs well at Churchill. Fed Biz the Kids soon to be starting. Godspeed. Nice. Trish is on my team here, wants to get us going with a GoFundMe to buy Swiss at the sale. Wants to see her go out on a good note. Well, that's going to be we might break some GoFundMe records if we can make that one happen, Trish. We'll keep that in mind. It's post time for the 7th race at Belmont Park. We've got a 2-5 entry with Clench and Happy Farm. Can we come up with something clever in here, Matt? I mean, they certainly feel like this entry deserves to be at the top of the market, but I don't think I want to settle for that just to fire away here during HorsePlayer Happy Hour on a Thursday afternoon.
Well, full disclosure, this was just handicapping off the raw dope. I didn't get to watch any tape. I haven't gone through and done much more than just what you see in the racing form. This was what ate up some time on the airplane. Happy Farm, if this horse runs back to the best races, probably wins. I think you have to acknowledge that the best races came under the tutelage of Jason Service. So, I'm not going to apologize and say I'm a little bit dubious about how good this one actually is. I don't know. Why can Free Enterprise get a piece at 10-1 right now? I mean, defeated, flat out beautiful in the most recent start, maybe a little bit on the slower side compared to some of the best in here, but by no means hopelessly overmatched. And I feel like I've seen enough of these other horses at this 40 level that maybe they've been exposed that this is a little bit too much. And I don't know, I suppose you can say that about Free Enterprise, but I don't know, given the price and the likelihood of this one potentially winning, I'll give this one a 9% chance of getting it done.
Yeah, I don't hate that. I don't hate that idea one bit. I was a little interested in Fox Red here potentially to maybe prove the best of speed and the care now of Safi Joseph. He did not have the greatest summer, but you see this sometimes with outfits, especially outfits that, Safi Joseph obviously has more than just claimers now, but I think to back in the day of trainers who I think of a lot of their stock being of the claiming variety, they can wake up sometimes on that move downstate. It doesn't seem like there's a ton of pace in here. Each half of the entry has speed. You figure one of them will take back. Maybe Fox Red can get a decent spot in here first off the claim for Safi Joseph and make a little bit of noise. Al Cools, that's another horse that should be forward that you could maybe tell a little bit of a story about. Another one for the family, different Engelhart, but for the family Engelhart. But yeah, I mean, I think runners like the 2, 3, and 4 are quite reasonable alternatives to this short priced entry, and maybe I'll look to do a small double, getting started with those three as we kick off HorsePlayer Happy Hour here. I don't know if you had a strong opinion coming up in race number 8. It did look like you're going to be having a very live favored entry in that spot as well, with Value Engineering and Perjury Trap. But if you can beat the 1-2 shot in the first half of the double, part of me is even just considering accepting the chalk in the second leg and playing those three numbers against.
There's actually a horse that, and I'm going to try to, in the midst of the show, watch the tape of the race, because I do actually think the 6 Caninos, I don't know how you want to pronounce it, in the next race, I think fits really, really well, overmatched in the last 2, both without Lasix. Lasix go back on, you get back to the 1.25 mile at Belmont. This is the configuration we saw that win, and at the same level, 3 starts back, with a little bit of pace. Granted, there is very little in there. I think that horse has a big chance at a decent number.
Yeah, that's a good call as well. I might throw in for a penny on these doubles. You could tell a bunch of stories. I think we'll go in that race in much more detail as we get along. But folks who are looking to play along with us in doubles for race number 7 as they get ready to go into the gate, those are a couple of ideas. Me willing to take the chalk and Matt's clever idea on, I'm going to say Cananos in race number 8. We got a good little turnout today, 170 players. We don't probably need to do the leaderboard update until after this race at this point. Wayne asking about some more international prices. Jackie's Warrior 9-1 for the sprint. From what he's shown, I think a 3-year-old seems pretty likely to win the sprint. I don't think he'll have to contend with Life is Good. We've talked about the ability of that horse to run potentially in the dirt mile instead. I don't think it's a crazy notion at all to take that kind of a price if you can get it on Jackie's Warrior. I mean, are you with me that it feels like a good year for a 3-year-old to step up and win the sprint?
Yeah, very much so. I mean, I guess the only question now at this point would be, and we have a late scratch. It looks like Clench has been withdrawn.
Oh, wow. So that's going to be purse money only then for the other half of the entry. So everything's up in the air here.
Or was Clench already out? No, right?
No, I think this is both halves were in. And hang on one second. Let me just
this is going to get interesting now.
I'm not misspeaking, but no, yep. I mean when by state rule, when one half of the entry scratches, both halves of the entry scratch. There was a famous old school story. I think it was at Aqueduct, where it was like basically there was an entry of like a 1-5 shot in a horse that would have been 20-1. And the 1-5 shot scratched. And then people were stuck with the horse, the 20-1 shot essentially. And there was like a near riot, people like setting things on fire in the garbage can. This could be urban legend too, but it's a story I've heard more than once.
No, it sounds about right.
And they and so now in this situation, when one is out, both are out, and of course, it makes a different kind of mess. So we'll see how it plays out because this 1A now, Happy Farm will run in the race and could win. And you could have wanted to bet on Happy Farm, and now you're going to randomly get whoever the public decides to be the morning line favorite. I mean, gosh, it's when I say this stuff out loud sometimes, Matt, it's 2021. Surely there's a better way of doing this.
I think it was Nick Tamero who tweeted it like last week that I can buy airline tickets all across the world, from your phone, but I just have to get stuck with the post-time favorite if I have a late scratch in a multi-race bet. Like, it's just such a silly thing. But actually, and it's an interesting point. We'll find out how the horse runs. I actually like Free Enterprise considerably more now that both halves of the entry are gone from a betting standpoint, as the horse goes all the way back to last. I just, from a numbers standpoint, I think 4-1 against this field was kind of reasonable when you compare it to the 8 or 10-1 that the horse would have been against the entry. That makes sense?
It does make sense because of just the way the dynamics change and the fact that you can now run second essentially and win.
Yeah.
Trish asked a great question about what happens in contests. If you have an alternate pick, some contest formats allow an alternate pick. If an alternate pick is allowed, you would get that. Otherwise, post-time favorite, who I think is going to end up being Fox Red, who looks like, well, let's see what happens here. Al Cools is actually hanging tough against the non-existent 1A. We're going to see either, I think Al Cools is going to just hold. So, I guess, you can argue it either way. I know horse players, and they're going to say, oh, look, I got so much less on my Al Cools. I would have had 9-1. I only got 4-1. But yeah, but you don't know how it would have played out with Clench in the race. It wouldn't necessarily have played out that Al Cools was still able to hold Happy Farm. But so for the record here, the 2 is your winner. The 4 will be your place horse, and your try will be 2, 4, 5 here in the opening race of HorsePlayer Happy Hour, race number 7 at Belmont. There it is up on the screen now. It comes 2, 4, 5, 6 for parimutuel purposes. And yeah, nice run from Al Cools. It was very game in the lane. Looked potentially vulnerable to the late charge of Happy Farm, but nobody was going by in the end.
I would love to. That's one that I'd like to go back and find out why Free Enterprise was last at one point, because the horse ran, I think, pretty well, and maybe you don't run that way if you're a little bit closer to the pace. But this is a horse that I expected to be within length and a half, 2 lengths, and ended up spotting the leader 6 at 1.7. So
yeah, no kind of trip at all from Free Enterprise in that spot. Glued to the rail. The winner is down inside as well, but more like the 2 path. That's another thing I'd take a look at with Free Enterprise, the way the Belmont rail has played the last few years. There's a chance Free Enterprise is probably a bet back coming out of that race, just from the fact that taken back to last in what didn't appear to be. I mean, actually looking at the fractions, it's an honest pace. So maybe that wasn't such a bad place to be, but it certainly didn't look like a very tactical spot. Let's put it that way.
So, and Wayne brings up the piece that as I sort of, lost my mind when the race was running, with the whole Jackie's Warrior thing, I tend to agree with you. I guess the wild card, the X factor is Flightline.
Yes.
I was on Howard Kravitz's pod last week, and I said, there's a part of me that is as neat as it would be to see it. I feel like we've done this before, and it doesn't always work out the way that I think we can sort of romanticize the idea of a horse that is just a complete freak of nature and is just arguably one of the best sprinters from a numbers standpoint that we've had in the past 20 years. I think back to like Catalina Cruiser, who also happened to be this whole same outfit, I believe, Ronis and John Sadler, and he had never been tested. And when he got tested, he proved to be, a bit of someone who does his best when he's punching down. And I just don't know. I'm not saying that would be the case with Flightline, but I kind of, more and more time goes by, I don't hate the idea of taking time, running him in the Malibu, especially for a horse that I think is going to do better going longer, going a route of ground when all is said and done. So that would be my only sort of cause for pause. Although at 9-1 on Jackie's Warrior, I don't think I could talk you off that.
No, Flightline is obviously fascinating, and the figure monkey in me wants to, start swinging from the branches. But, there's also an undeniable, there's some issues here for the way the horse has been campaigned. So this is a horse that, more than most, I think they're going to have to just let the horse tell him what he's capable of. And if there's any hiccups, a lot of times with these sprinters, we've seen this a lot of years at the Breeders' Cup where a certain sprinter is maybe looking a little ouchy, maybe not looking in top form. A lot of times they just run right through it. Kona Gold, work all week. There's another example too from a recent memory. Oh, even Run Happy. Like these were not horses that were, to my eye, looking like awesome in the weeks leading up to the Breeders' Cup. And for whatever reason, sprinters seem to be able to run through that stuff. When the bell rings for that discipline, those fast twitch muscles, they seem to be able to look a lot better sometimes doing that than they do galloping around there in the mornings. With this horse, Flightline, he's going to have to really be touting himself for me to take those numbers at face value, just because I think the hype machine is in overdrive, and yet there's this very real concerns about his condition, given how little we've seen him on the racetrack. So that's my skepticism about him, and another reason why I probably wouldn't mind that 9s on Jackie's Warrior.
I think the most appealing, and this is just off the top of my head, maybe somebody can suggest a horse that I'm overlooking. The most appealing alternative to me at this point, just because he's going to go into it theoretically, unless he runs at Keeneland, with very, very dirty form, is Lexingtonian. And he's another one that you have never any clue when he's going to run his big one. But his big one's good enough to win. And the good news is, with the terrible start in the Forego, draw a line through that last race, maybe they bring him back at Keeneland. I haven't read anything. I almost would rather them just train him into the Breeders' Cup and take a shot there, because he'll be 25-1. I mean, no, he's not going to be among the favorites in there. And his best, he's run well at Del Mar in the past. I've brought it up. He's a very versatile type. He's run equally as well when he's cutting out the fractions as when he takes back and makes one run. He just, again, on a day where he's one of the choices, he is not interesting whatsoever. On a day that he's 25-1, I could talk myself into it.
And you might see that in a race like the Breeders' Cup Sprint. Wayne points out about Flightline on pedigree could go longer. I don't think they're going to go. I don't get the impression they're going to go dirt mile. I just got the impression it was going to be the sprint, but it's not. That's not crazy. Got a question about Nashville. I believe he's retired. I haven't seen him on the work tab since April. So I guess it's possible they could be looking to bring him back one more time, and it's an extended vacation. I mean, he doesn't. It's not like he won as brilliant as he was. It's not. He doesn't have a lot of the things that, I don't know where he'd be able to stand, right? Because he didn't win as a 2-year-old. He doesn't have a grade 1 win. What's his claim to fame? The Perryville, and running a couple of fast figures. Like this, he might get an opportunity somewhere, but I don't know if they think he could come back and actually win a grade 1. I do think it would increase his value, though I guess that wouldn't be until he's 4 now.
Yeah. So
it's already getting a little old. I don't know what's going on there. That's worth a Google. And if anybody sees it and wants to drop it in the comments, I'll ask around and see if I could find out, because he certainly showed some immense potential in that race at Keeneland. Well, what was it? It was the Saratoga Maiden was impressive. Yeah. And then he backed it up with the allowance win at Keeneland, and then the win on the undercard looked like the next big thing. And then Charlotte ripped his heart out in the Malibu, and we haven't seen him since.
And that's the sort of thing that I fear with a horse like Flightline, especially considering I genuinely believe when you watch the gallop out, and I know some people that doesn't mean anything to them. I mean, he basically wanted to go around again. I think he was just really kind of out there doing his thing. It's a double-edged sword, because I also caution the idea that I don't think just because he wasn't asked with the stick or anything like that, I don't think that means that there's 107 in there. I think he may just be running, and that's what he is. I'm more intrigued by the possibility of him doing that, going longer, going 2 turns, out 2. And that's part of the reason I kind of am pro the idea of give him time. Clearly, he's not the soundest thing in the world. There's a reason that we've had the lengthy gaps that we have between his 2 races. But give him some more time. Let him come back in the Malibu, and then the beginning of 22, stretch him out. If you want to go to a 1-turn mile and an 1/8, send him over to Saudi Arabia. If you want to wait and keep him at home for the idea of sort of a 1 1/8 to the 1 1/4 move, run him in the Californian and then wheel him back in the big cap, and have him be the boss of this division next year. I regardless of what they choose to do, I'm just hopeful it doesn't compromise his chances of going long next year, because I think I think the talent is abundant. I don't think anybody can argue that.
There's some other good questions. I like what's happening in the comments here. I like being directed to do this deeper dive into the sprint, which I wasn't planning on, but I'm very happy to do it. Dr. Shivel gets put forward as one with that course and distance form, with that big run in the Bing Crosby. I guess my concern with that, such as it is it was an ideal setup to run a really good time figure, and it was just an okay time figure. And then we got a mention of Bango as well, who just, look, I can't rule the horse out, but I don't think he shows that brilliance in terms of figures to hang with Jackie's Warrior's good race.
I think and I'm trying to pull up the fig right now. I mean, you basically said what I would have said about Dr. Shivel, the idea that it was just a really slow race. It's difficult for me to get excited about any of the horses coming out of that spot. I want to say the buyer was something like a 90 or a 91. Let me pull it up right here. July
the form
31.
is out okay. A few have come back. I've noticed a few horses came back out of that and have done, I think it's produced at least a win and maybe a couple of seconds. But yeah, it was, I mean, let's say it was even 100. Like, that's not going to sniff Jackie's Warrior, is it?
So it was a 93. And to your point, you have had some decent enough efforts. 8 Rings came back and earned a 95. CZ Rocket came back and earned a 99. They both improved their fig from the Bing Crosby. So perhaps the number was a little bit light. Vertical Threat, who finished last, who I liked in that race, he won his next race with an 88 at Mahoning Valley. No, not at Mahoning Valley, at Charlestown. So, I suppose maybe it's a little light. And if it is, great. I still don't know that I think it's Breeders' Cup Sprint winner good. No.
Yeah. It's going to be an interesting race to see because it might be you might have a top of the market up here and then everybody else. And obviously, the huge question with that market and the betting is going to be what the heck happens with Flightline. I'm excited. I'm always excited about that race, but I'm really particularly excited about it this year. I think it'll make for some fun conversations on In the Money Media, the Matt Bernier Show, the Players Podcast, all of our different arms here. We do have that special guest I mentioned. We're going to get to him in a minute, but there's an excellent question from Tom, who's been fantastic in the comments all season, asking about Hurricane Lane, who won the St. Ledger in a very impressive display of speed and stamina last weekend. That he mentions that he was on the wrong lead coming home. Tom wants to know if lead changes in Euro racing carries similar importance as in the U.S. He says he sees running on the wrong lead more in Europeans. And I have to say, it's just a different animal because of the configurations of the courses. I mean, don't you think, Matt, that part of the reason why we get focused on lead changes here is because every course is basically the same and they train over the same course. They're not training over gallops like these Euros. So like a horse can sort of give an indication when they're not getting with this program that they've practiced 8,000 times, that maybe something is a little bit off. Whereas in Europe, for me, it's just a totally different ballgame because it's not, you don't race by rote as much. I mean, sure, you could still typically identify a right and a wrong lead on any course that has a bend, but plenty of courses don't have bends, and it's just a different animal. I mean, I think it's an interesting observation, but I wouldn't think it means anything negative in terms of Hurricane Lane going forward.
To me, to your point, it has all to do with the configuration and the way those races are run, and to try to bring it back here to the States. It's part of the reason that when I go through and watch tape from Kentucky Downs, lead changes in the stretch don't really mean anything to me because it's not something that these horses have ever really encountered, where you're running uphill at the very end of a proper quarter-mile stretch. They start getting a little bit tired. They swap around. I'm not going to penalize them nearly as much as I would. And guess what? The same kind of goes for what we'll see on Saturday here at Woodbine. It's such a long stretch, especially for the Woodbine Mile, that I'm not going to totally hold it against a horse if they end up popping to their left lead or they swap a couple times in that final eighth of a mile, just because that's about as long a stretch as they're going to run in any of these races. And I think you need to at least, and knowing this from your time over in Europe and paying as much attention to that European form as you do, I think it's just a totally different, it's apples to oranges in my opinion.
I will just bring up, for maybe there's some new people watching who haven't heard this metaphor before, that I think is pretty accurate when you're wondering about lead changes and what they can mean in terms of fatigue. And I love the analogy of your and maybe it's more of a New York thing because we don't take the car to the grocery store and just walk back with our bags. But you're walking with your big heavy grocery bag back for your mile walk from the whatever Gristides over on 3rd Avenue back up the hill or whatever. And it's like, when things are going well, you're feeling within yourself. Maybe you hold it in the right for a block, and then you cross over to 4th Avenue and you switch it to your left hand and you do a block that way and you switch back and forth in like this measured way with a plan. You get to that last block between 6th and 7th when the grade of the hill gets up. You're flipping it back and forth all the time. You can't. The arms get tired. I think it's similar in terms of load bearing. I don't know if that's reductive or accurate to your description, Matt, but I know that's helped some people understand what we're talking about sometimes when we talk about these lead changes.
I think it's the best analogy or the best visualization from like a human standpoint of what we're comparing it to. I had a roommate in New York when I first moved down there, and she grew up with horses, and she was going to school to be a veterinarian. And when I brought it up one day, because I had it on the TV in the living room, I brought up lead changes, and she said it makes all the sense in the world because of the way the horses are carrying their weight, which again, this is beyond me, but the idea of, I suppose if you think about it, like if you watch a NASCAR race and you see the banking in the corners, the idea is everything shifts one way. And she said, if they're making a left-hand turn, you would rather have the weight on the left side than on the right side, and vice versa. If you did that on the turn, then you want to be on the right side when you're going on a straight run. So that was also another kind of little thing for me, that visualizing. I said, that makes sense.
That is very good. That's good stuff. All right, we're going to bring in our special guest now. We talked about him before. He's been doing a yeoman's work on InTheMoneyPodcast.com. He's making a little run at this HorsePlayer Happy Hour Tour, and he's already punched one ticket into the BCBC via a $20 entry last week. Michael Domable, how are things?
Things are great, Pete. We're trying to make a run here today to move up the leaderboard. Need a little runner action to close it out, but we'll see how it goes.
Are you in position? Let's pop this leaderboard up. Let's see where Michael is on there. I know, Michael, you were talking about the strategy specifically you were employing being in the position you're in. I thought that was real interesting from a game theory point of view. How did you approach these entries today?
Yeah, so today I kind of wanted to take a tact of having two entries with my top picks. So if I really hit well, then I would have both two entries up top, which could get me right in line with David. But really what I really need to do in the last 2 weeks is get one entry each week near the top 5. So I did split one entry out in case I wasn't right on with my picks today. So that's the one that's actually done better. That's the one that's sitting in 22nd. So I've got Temple in this next race, number 2, and then I've got Exfiltration in the last. And if it goes runner, I think I'll finish around 2nd.
Okay.
And which would put me another 90 points closer to David. So I'm looking forward to it. Let's see how it goes.
David himself looks like he's in danger of adding to his total as well. He had an entry up there. Have you had a chance to meet him in real life or virtually yet, Michael? I think you guys would get along.
No, I haven't. So it's funny. I posted the Kentucky Downs picks on the blog last week, and I put in my picks exactly as I put them in on the blog. And then the next week I see KY Gambler is following me on Twitter. So I had to be a little careful so he doesn't block me in the last week here of throwing out too much information.
Oh, that's so funny. We'll make sure we don't have to have you post anything publicly on the last game of the regular season. Take us through this run you had in the contest last week, Michael. How were you? Obviously, you've qualified. You've fed a bunch of these $20 Thursdays into Saturdays. What was your record of success heading into last weekend, and then how did it all play out on the leaderboard for your big hit?
Yeah, I think it's nice. It's a nice tagline when you say it was $20 into a $10,000 BCBCC, but it's really been $60 a week since April into a $10,000 BCBCC.
That's still not bad though.
I know, no, it's definitely less than 10 grand, that's for sure. But yeah,
don't forget the charity component.
Oh, and then I actually, on a serious note, that's really what's bringing me back each and every week is the VIG going to such a great cause. I see you got the I won and so did they shirt. Yep. As on Pete, it's great that the Breeders' Cup's putting this forward, and that's where the VIG is going with horseplayers.com as well. As far as the contest on Saturday, it was Kentucky Downs heavy, and that's what really helped me out since I was following it so closely, covering it for you guys over at InTheMoneyPodcast.com. The Learjet was one of my main keys in the blog, and then it really helped me get to the top in that contest and qualify for the first time for the BCBC.
Well, that's exciting stuff, and hopefully you're not done yet. Who knows? You feed in again and max out that way, or you'll certainly be part of our finals if nothing else. We got 3 minutes to this race at Belmont. Let's bring Matt Bernier back in. We talked about a little bit of your idea in this race already, Matt, but curious to get you to expand a bit more on what you think is going to play out in here. And then Michael will bring you in to talk about your pick, Temple, as well.
Well, if you don't mind, let's start with Michael because I'm actually watching back the tape of the horse that I'm
let's do it. Let's do it. So Temple appealing to you now, now obviously pick and pray format. What price did you think you were going to get? Are you happy enough with the 5-1? And what do you like about this runner?
Yeah, 5-1's about the right number for him. It's tough to claim off Mike Maker, but Tom Morley's actually done some pretty good work with some of his claims, especially turf routers. Tell Your Daddy, who won the Bernard Baruch, was from the Tom Morley barn, who is a recent claim. The run two back looks better than it is on paper. Ricardo Santana really had to wrap up coming down the stretch, and that fifth, he could have probably finished second or third. So if you have a little bit more time, maybe watch that replay, Matt. And then the last time in the lure, Flavius kind of walked on the front end, so you can probably draw a line through that one. 5-1's the right number. I didn't want to take the entry because it really needs to run 1-2 to be beneficial in this contest format. So that's where I'll end it on Temple.
Good stuff. Michael, are you ready to yap, Matt, or you got more tape to watch?
Yeah, no, I'm good. It checked out what I was hoping to see. In grand scheme of things, Caninos, it was a pretty good trip back on April 29th. That's the race that I'm basing all of this off of. There was no pace that day. It's going to be a very similar setup what we've got this afternoon. I don't think there is a ton of speed signed on. And I just like the way that the horse closed in. The two most recent starts against Stakes Company, clearly not that good. You get back to this level, you get Lasix back on. I don't know that you're going to need much more than a low 90 to win this race. And, some of the other horses in here specifically, I'm going to put him in the winner's circle. Now, Chad's entry, I don't know. I don't think they're killers in here. I think 3-5 is, to me, I don't think it's warranted on figs anyway. If you're just going on the connections, yeah, I mean, you can make them 1-100, but just based on the horses running today, I don't think they should be 3-5.
Yeah, it's short enough, and you see that phenomenon with entries. I really like value engineering. I just think it's going to be perfectly positioned, and he's got the closing kick. I mean, I just have that little double going, which obviously has had a lot of the value taken out of it with the odds on entry scratching. I'm just going to leave this alone and let that ride based on that idea that I had. But I mean, if I were starting new doubles here, I would not be taking the 3-5. And I think both of your runners are interesting alternatives. So Michael, I've been meaning to ask you this. We got to hang out a little bit in Saratoga, but it's typical Saratoga insanity where you don't get to have the proper conversations you want to have with everybody. How did you get into horse racing in the first place? I want to hear a little bit about your origin story. I know you've made some references that suggest you've been listening to me and this guy for a minute anyway.
I apologize.
No, my story is pretty similar to a lot of people's. My dad got me into it. We used to live in upstate New York, and so we'd go to Saratoga every year. And I've actually been there. I'm 27 years old, and I've been there every year of my life, including when I was in utero. So that's the only year I missed was last year, of course, which I'm going to put a well-warranted.
That doesn't count.
Yeah, well-warranted asterisk goes on that.
Yes.
So I'm going to say the streak is still alive.
I agree.
And then as I kind of got older and kind of my passions are really data focused, so I love the idea of looking at these races and the instant gratification of if you're right or not right away versus stock can take 5 years to pay off, whereas this is 2 minutes.
That's an excellent point. I could tell from meeting you was one of those things. Just 4 sentences about horse racing, and I was like, well, he's an analyst or an engineer. I'm not sure which. I think
a little bit of both, actually.
In your case, it's both. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's that kind of brain that we need. I mean, so you obviously working with the group of people you work with. I mean, do you have any ideas about what can horse racing do to attract more people who have that sort of mindset, whether it's looking at financial markets or sports gambling or, what can we do to bring more of you into the fold?
I think Pat Cummings has been a proponent of this. The free data is going to be key. You don't have to give away the whole store. You don't have to give away the proprietary information, but at least getting something like downloadable in a digestible format for people to go and do their analysis on. That would be a great way to get people involved, because you look at what the other big sporting companies are doing, the big sport leagues, they have the data accessible. Whereas for us, it's a little bit more difficult to really get in there and do your modeling and things like that.
So you do that type of work in addition to traditional handicapping. It seems like you don't choose between the two.
Well, for me, as the runners just got going, for me, I'm more of a traditional handicapping side just because of the barrier to entry in terms of data.
Oh, that's interesting.
Data availability and price, so to speak. So I'm the form and replays, is my keys. But if the data was more available, I might do some more statistical methodology towards it.
And that's only going to lead to more handle, to your point about helping the game. Well, Temple drifted out to 7-1, is in a pretty nice spot here. Summer to Remember, a little bit loose out there on the lead. I haven't seen a fraction yet to know how far they're going. I like a lot where Value Engineering is for the point of view of my double, but I'm not sure I trade places with Temple right now with that exaggerated double handful saving ground there, down there on the inside. What do you think, Matt? Who do you like? Who do you like from here?
I mean, from front to back, they're stretched out by about 10 lengths. In New York, they still might be going 52 to the half. You never know. But look, yeah, I mean, I think anybody in that sort of top flight, if you like Summer to Remember, you're probably in a pretty good position. Temple's in that beautiful pocket run. I guess I'm going to try and follow you right up the hedge. Hopefully you can tow me into this thing. And to your point, Value Engineering, he's got every opportunity if good enough.
Yeah, looks like he'll try to tip and cut and run. I guess the first question we'll have answered is what does Summer to Remember have left as he starts to move his hands a little bit on this front runner. Definitely asking for effort from Temple now. We'll know it in a heartbeat if he can get that split and finish. Value Engineering did not come alive the way that I was hoping yet, but still some opportunity here as we get down to the eighth pole. Michael, you got to be getting pretty excited. It ain't done, but you got a nice split there from Temple, and he's extending as he moves to the line.
Nice ride from Johnny V.
Yeah, that was very good. That was very good stuff. You got to be happy with that. I love seeing him. He does a few little things to tip his hand sometimes when he's really got a lot of horse. I normally get annoyed with the check when the jockeys do the check back, but I don't mind it from Johnny V because I feel like he only does it when he knows he's got tons. And then there's that the exaggerated double handful was the tip off there. That's a very nice price and a good winner for you. We'll put you in position. Let's go back to that leaderboard briefly, AJ, if you can. Let's see how many people above Michael had this number 2 Temple in our 8th race at Belmont, and we'll get a sense of where you're going to be. We'll let you get out of here, Michael, after we see where you are on the leaderboard, but we definitely appreciate you coming by and spending some time, and hope you have an opportunity to continue to do a little bit more work for us over at InTheMoneyPodcast.com. You know what I always say, no good deed goes unpunished around here, and you've certainly done a lot of good deeds through with your work at Colonial, and then also Kentucky Downs, where you just knocked it out of the park.
Yeah, appreciate it. Have me on anytime, and anything you need, I'll be able to handicap it for you.
I'm seeing just a couple of people in that first page who are ahead of you. What did David Browning have? That's what I want to see. Scroll down a little bit more.
3.
Okay, he was on the 3. Yeah, I mean you're gonna be in it's gonna be a little bit of drama here. As we get to the sharp end of this HorsePlayer Happy Hour, and Michael, thank you very much for popping on again. We don't need to make you wait till it's official. We'll come and holler at you again very soon. Appreciate your time and effort and support of this HorsePlayer Happy Hour. Appreciate it, guys.
Good luck, Mike.
Good stuff. All right. I guess we could have thrown questions from Michael out to the assorted crew of folks. I didn't think to do that until it was too late. But I think during the playoffs, we'll do a lot more of that where we get people on in video. It'd be nice to see the faces of some of these people who've been such supportive commenters all throughout the season. I really like that. And Matt, I know that's something that you do a great job of over on the Matt Bernier show too, getting that interaction going with the audience. It makes it fun, and it makes it something a little bit different than sort of traditional media coverage.
Well, and also too, I mean, I think especially for my pod where it's basically just me, and if we have the Friday feature, we have a guest on, but for the most part, I got to make sure it's something that people want to listen to. So no better way to find out than to, throw it out into the water and say, what do you do you want more of this? You want less of this? You want more of this? Whatever it may be. Because it's not like I'm set in my ways. I think you need to be able to adapt. We've talked about it with handicapping. Same goes for any kind of content. It's only as good as it is having folks that want to read it and listen to it and watch it. So as long as you can cater to the audience, I think that's what you need to do. So I've tried to do it as much as possible with my show. I know we do it here, like you say, with the commenters coming along. And I think the more interaction, the better off we all are.
Agree with that completely. Some Euro questions about one about St. Mark's Basilica, who's just been so impressive, and what's going to be next for him. It's a great question. I mean, the ARC certainly makes sense. The Breeders' Cup as a potential. I haven't heard the Breeders' Cup discussed at all, but I mean, it's as they say over there, it's a free roll to nothing in a lot of ways. I mean, you're risking very little, and you have a chance to make a lot of money and increase the international just sort of presence of this horse heading into stud. They might say he's done enough now, simply because he, in terms of ratings, is among the best O'Brien's ever trained. Now we've heard, we talked about this ahead of the last race, and there is some wise guy skepticism about that. But official ratings are official ratings, and unofficial ratings, you might say, you know what, he's done enough. They need that Galileo successor. They've got a very buzzed up, successful horse in St. Mark's Basilica. I have no idea what's going to happen, but it's certainly going to be interesting to see what happens. And then also a question about Hurricane Lane and what comes next. They're saying the ARC. The record of Ledger winners in the ARC is not good, but just because something has never happened doesn't. The future isn't predicated on the past like that. I mean, it's all going to depend how things come up. We have seen Ledger winners do well in the Breeders' Cup turf. I think often it just comes down to class and what's gonna come over. So I mean, I was super impressed by that race. I did think it looked like more of a stamina performance than the type of performance that I immediately say, oh my God, that horse is going to be suited to racing in the USA. It wasn't like that. It was more of a galloping effort. But I mean, he's certainly an interesting horse who, if they chose to come over here, you wouldn't be counting him out based on that form. So something to say. Another note on Flightline, 7-2 for the sprint. I wouldn't touch it. I wouldn't touch it. I think he, if it was, I'll tell you what, if it was non-runner, no bet, I would think about it hard. But the fact that we have this horse who's clearly had issues, has another path that he could potentially go, and we don't know if he's got, what's he to make the gate? He's at least, I mean, I can't put him at shorter than even money to make the gate in there. So at that point, it becomes 7-2 becomes kind of a crappy price. I wouldn't be like in a hurry to lay it, but I'd rather lay it than back it, if that makes sense.
What was the to go back to the turf? What was the name of? I know his name. What big race did Talismanic win the year that Cowface, the winner of the Breeders' Cup turf?
He won. Did he win the Foy? Maybe the prep for the ARC.
Is that what it was?
Maybe I could look that up real quick.
Because he felt like to me, and I don't know if that's how you had viewed him, more of a stayer as opposed to a bang turn of foot type. Is that fair?
Yes, he definitely. No, he was definitely more of a grinder. This PP does not have the whole thing. But yeah, the way that race played out, I thought it would just suit the horse who was running last. Because remember, trying to remember who was in there, but there were like 2 or 3 confirmed speed types. And when you see that, even around a tight configuration, those gallopers have a chance to get going and make a lot of noise. It's just when you get, let's say your typical New York turf race, these galloping types, unless they can make the lead, which is I think where Ryan Moore's brain was smartly going with Bolshoi Ballet last time. This maybe overdid it, but like a mid-pack galloper is going to have a world of trouble around a tight, firm, left-handed course with no pace.
He won 1.75 miles, and that's why that was what kind of made me think of the St. Ledger. He finished 3rd in the Pre-Foy, and prior to that at Saint Cloud, he won. I'm not going to butcher this. Maurice Neal.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Yeah.
1.75 miles. So to that point, while I tend to agree with you, I don't know that I love horses that are just going to outstay everyone. I don't think there. Put it this way: there's precedent for those horses to do well with the circumstances, and you're going to get a juicy price like Pete did in the Breeders' Cup back in 17.
You typically need some racing circumstances with those types. Who else? Conduit. Wasn't Conduit a Ledger winner? So obviously he didn't he win the Breeders' Cup? He won twice, didn't he?
Well, and even you think about like maybe he's not the sort of prototypical stayer, but I do think of a horse like Highland Reel, who he had speed, which kind of changes it up a little bit. But to me, if you really wanted to, I bet you probably could have stretched him out to a 1 3/4.
Yeah, galloping speed. He's the perfect example, and I think that's what Ryan Moore wanted to do with Bolshoi Ballet the last day. And it just didn't work out because there ended up being other pace. For whatever reason, the horse got lit up. He never looked comfortable, and he set unsustainably fast fractions, and he ended up a dull fourth. The problem is this horse has had so much hype on him, even money in the damn Derby. He's going to probably be bet again on Saturday. Like, this is a horse, if they let him get away 3-1, 4-1, Bolshoi Ballet, I'd be very happy getting stuck into with the thought that Ryan Moore can now revise those tactics, keep him forward, but try to meet out those fractions a little more evenly and be very, 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 very dangerous.
You bring up a good point that I don't know why it never registered with me. He was even money in the Derby. What, like, is it a total red flag that they came right here?
I mean, it's not. It suggests that he was overhyped going into the Derby, but at the same time, Epsom is so weird. I think they just said, they know who else they have in the barn to go and pick up all those valuable targets. They've had success with this globetrotting program before, whether it was, Highland Reel or a number of other runners. I think they just said, we can make an absolute ton of money sending this guy around. And then I think there were some real questions after the Saratoga Derby. Enough questions emerged that they weren't going to get overly ambitious with him. But, so for those that don't know, I didn't really set this up right. This is the Jockey Club Derby on Saturday at Belmont, 5:45 Eastern, a race where I ended up picking Bolshoi. But I'm a little interested in this Tokyo Gold as an alternative too. And I'll probably have an exacta with 8 and 3 there, because Tokyo Gold, Bolshoi Ballet beat him pretty soundly. Like, just my visual impression was that the margin was greater than the length and a quarter, but Bolshoi's ran in between. Tokyo Gold hasn't. Tokyo Gold was closing very well that day. Tokyo Gold is bred to relish this added ground. And Tokyo Gold is 8-1 on the morning line as opposed to 5-2 Bolshoi Ballet, which I think could even go lower. So I definitely want to keep him on side. And then the other logical form horse in here is the 2 Yabir, coming from the Voltager win at York. York, a course that I always like as a pointer for American form because it's left-handed and typically it's better ground. It was firm ground there. I mean, extremely logical, but has been a bit of an in and outer in his career. He didn't get around Chester great. That was back when he was a front runner. He's since learned to settle. Chester is in many ways the best pointer for U.S. racing because it's very tight turn, left-handed. And again, typically decent ground, though that was yielding that day. But so I'm just torn about Yabir, and I'm going to mix. I'm going to use him defensively, and I'm going to use Bolshoi and Tokyo Gold, I think, in that race. It's an interesting little race.
The most fascinating thing for me, and it has really nothing even to do with the races at Belmont on Saturday, more thinking down the road, and I know Wayne just chimed in, the idea to me of Bolshoi Ballet here and the 2 races that he's run, granted, to be fair, the way that Saratoga Derby played out, he didn't really have much of a chance. I wasn't overly blown away by the Belmont Derby. I didn't think it was bad, but I guess I expect when he sends what I would call good ones over here, Aidan O'Brien, I expect the big performances. Yeah. And it's part of the reason, when I compare, and granted, it's very difficult to do this, and I'm sure, people would point this out, Bolshoi Ballet against the horses he's run against versus Santa Barbara. And when I watch Santa Barbara run, I have to be honest, I have no interest. Warlike Goddess, good horse. I have no interest in anyone outside of Santa Barbara. I think she's a monster. Maybe I'm way overrating her.
Yeah. She's very stylish.
I'll be stunned if she loses.
Yeah.
If the form continues on this way, because she tape-wise, to me, has done so much more to get me excited than what Bolshoi Ballet has done. And they each run in their races at effectively the same prices. So I don't know. It's a weird thing that I have when I watch. And the other interesting thing is their figs really aren't that different. You know, Santa Barbara hasn't earned gaudy speed figures, you know, from a buyer standpoint. But just watching it, I feel like she's 10 lengths the best in every race that she's run so far.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. There's one part of it, though, that I do think is when we're used to watching American racing and the kind of moves that win turf races here, those, you know, those turns of foot that put the races to bed in a matter of strides. I mean, she's a quickener. Now, she is by Camelot. She's not Galileo. The Galileos all seem like they're these big galloping types. Camelot, you know, is another horse that I guess won over a variety of distances, but certainly not, you know, as much of his speed and stamina in equal measure. But I do think that those turn of foot type horses, when they run around here, they just look sexier.
Yeah, it's true. It's true.
And I think that is part of it. But I agree that she's been unbelievable and is going to take a lot of beating. And I don't know what they're going to do. I don't know what they're going to do next with her. I haven't heard if it's going to be QE2 or if they're going to go, you know, I mean, to be able to now back off after beating Elders and run in a restricted race certainly seems like something that it doesn't sound like a bad idea. But I'm curious if anybody out there in the comments knows or has heard what the plans are for Santa Barbara. I'd be very curious to hear.
The only quote that I had seen was immediately following the Beverly D, O'Brien saying something along the lines of, the Breeders' Cup has always been the goal for her. And I don't know if it's because of the way races are run here in the States or the sort of firm ground that she was more likely to get. I don't know all the details behind it because I don't pay attention to European racing all the time. But the moment she got here, she looked like a superstar as far as we're concerned. Maybe that wouldn't hold up over there quite as well, but I think she's got a pretty, you know, commendable record over there too, correct?
Oh yeah, no, she's been tremendous. She's been tremendous, and you know, thrown into the fire from an early part in her career, and basically answered every question in the affirmative. She's super exciting, and I guess filly and mare turf for her. Yeah. We'll have to, you know, we'll see who shows up where. That's always an interesting question with a lot of these O'Brien runners as well. Yeah, I'm not anti-Warlike Goddess, but I can't really see her being my pick in a race like the filly and mare turf, just because I think there'll be, you know, something that I just have more of either have more preference for in terms of a runner like Santa Barbara, who's impressed me so much on the clock and on the figs, or some invader who's going to come over and be value, like we've seen in the last few years with, you know, the Iridesses and the Darias of the world.
Yep.
So
well, it's interesting you bring up, though, the possibility, and we'll pivot off of it right now. But, you know, she's won at sort of I would call them middle distances on grass. Went out to 1 mile and 3/8. You know, that is an interesting thought. I hadn't even considered the idea of perhaps her turning back to 1 mile. And I don't think you'd go out to 1.5 miles against the boys, but who knows? I mean, we've seen crazier things happen, but she's either going to need to step up in distance or cut back pretty substantially.
Right, because she's run at 10 and 9 and 9.5, right? So yeah, it'll be interesting to see what they decide to do there with her for sure. Let's just roll through this leaderboard. We got 17 players who will advance to play on our Saturday game, as Matt pointed out. You can also just buy in directly for that. Daniel Edwards. You went too fast there, AJ. I'm reading off the screen. Daniel Edwards, David McCarty, Terrence Severinson, Mark Henderson, Michael Domable, who does have 2 in front of him. So the best he could do is 3rd, but that would be, still 80 points closer to David Browning, setting up a bit of a showdown for next week, potentially. Norman Pearson, Don Marquardt, Robert Childress, Stephen Dudenoff, Mark Wilgard, Ernest Hay Jr., loyal listener. Good to see his name up there. Dan Sukup, Mike Herbert, Daniel Edwards, Todd Van Dree, John Meyer, and Michael Langer currently in position. A lot to play for, a lot of different numbers here. As we're flying through this edition of HorsePlayer Happy Hour. We just have 8 minutes to go to race number 9. Well, we talked about that one race at Belmont, Matt. I think we'd be remiss to at least not, I think we got to quickly discuss the Breeders' Cup win and you're in race that you're going to be covering up there at Woodbine on Saturday. The Grade 1 Woodbine Mile, 6:12 is the scheduled post time for this one. And the first thing that strikes me, where's the pace going to come from in here?
Yeah, right before we came on, I was chatting on the phone with Nick Luck, and I think Nick and I are going to go over the race together on Saturday when we give out some picks. But that was one of the things I kind of brought up. I said, outside of the top two, and we'll talk about both Set Piece and Raging Bull from a gambling standpoint, there's no speed at all. And would it totally stun you if at 15 or 20 to 1, Town Cruise was allowed to go out there and open up by 3 or 4 because everybody thought he would come back, and he never does, and he goes and pulls off some stunner? We've seen it in the past with horses who have that early foot in a race like this. El Tormenta comes to mind a few years ago, a horse that really, I don't think was a miler. I think was actually more like a 7/8 type, but had good early speed, used it to his advantage, and got the job done. I'm not saying I'm going to pick Town Cruise, but I'm also not going to rule it out because the way this race sets up on paper, there's nobody that's going to go with him.
Yeah, we've seen this movie before. That's what I said to Drew. I ended up kind of talking myself on using Town Cruise at least as like a C type, just because how mad am I going to be when, after getting absolute sand kicked in the face and stuffed in the locker by El Tormenta a couple of years ago, if we see that movie again with Town Cruise. And also, it was Tommy Massis who pointed out that for his money on these big days, a lot of times, I'll come on here and geek out about Frankie Dettori riding Raging Bull, and it's the tough local riders who often can steal the stage on the biggest day. So I'm kind of with you. I think Town Cruise should be left in the mix somewhere. Raging Bull is interesting, though. I mean, on his pace figures, he could be the one potentially keeping Town Cruise honest, but I just don't know. That's not really a Dettori thing. I mean, I think would prefer to be mid-pack and have somebody else do the donkey work. And here comes Dettori on the turn with a hopefully rejuvenated Raging Bull. I mean, yeah, so my first question in the race is the pace. My second question is, what do you do with this morning line favorite Raging Bull?
If he wins, I'll lose. He's just the kind of horse that, to me, he has underwhelmed me throughout his career. He can run big race.
You and JK have always talked bad about this horse.
Look, his best race is, I think, better than anyone else's best. The problem is it doesn't happen very frequently. And he has lost. Look, he's run 3 times this year. He has a win. Awesome. Great. He's lost twice at odds on. That doesn't sit well with me. Against fields that I think he should have been at least competitive in. And yes, he almost won that run 2 starts back in the poker, but
that was a bit of a fluke. That Alexandra dropping in like from an airplane at the 8th pull-up. I tend to be a little forgiving about that one. I feel like he did everything but win in the poker. However, the 4-star Dave is a good example of what you're saying.
He's just the sort of horse to me that at 2 to 1 or 8 to 5, I don't think he has a massive edge on this field. If he shows up with his A game, he probably wins. But he's run at Woodbine in the past. He didn't run poorly, but I don't think it was one of his best races. I don't know that he has to absolutely love this configuration. To me, if he wins, I lose.
I mean, it's fair. I ended up picking him with great trepidation, and I think the pace situation was part of it. I just think he's going to be in a better position than the horses that I like, quote unquote, want to pick. Like, I want to make a case for Space Traveler, but he is going to be very, very far back, and I'm just not sure that he's going to get any kind of trip in here. So, and we talked about Town Cruise. Something is holding. I couldn't make him my top pick, but so I ended up calling it 7-1-10, I think, or no, 7-10-1. In what I wrote down. I'm just worried. I mean, there's other Ride a Comet and Set Piece. They're so logical, but I mean, I just don't know what kind of trip they're going to get in here, and they're not going to be any great value into the teeth of a runner I fear tremendously in Raging Bull, who I do think is going to get a better trip. I mean, I respect just opposing Raging Bull based on what we've seen. That's probably the more logical course of action. I just blinked and picked him in the end. I
was going to say, what are you doing with Set Piece?
I mean,
where do you land on him?
I like him a lot, but I think that I just don't think he's going to get the setup that he needs to be shown to his best effect. And I think he could be hammered. I mean, I think 5-2, 2-1 for a horse I don't think is going to get a trip. I just, I'm okay letting him beat me in this spot. If I were doing a like giant exotic and I had strong opinions elsewhere and my whole day hinged on this, obviously, as I could afford him as a backup, he's super logical on form and figures, but it's race design that makes me not skeptical, but unenthusiastic at the likely odds.
There's a part of me that is very dubious about that 4-star Dave as time is going by. We'll find out how, and granted, the 2 races that we'll have horses coming out of would be run at a 1-turn mile and then at Kentucky Downs. So maybe it's not a fair comparison, but I'm a little leery about the form of that race right now. So I'm against both of those horses who are going to be the top 2 in the market. I really like March to the Arch. My big concern, and the reason I don't want to say totally, but he's never run without Lasix. And at 6 years old, I don't know that that's necessarily a good thing. I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but
I don't love it.
Yeah, exactly. I don't love it. I don't know what to expect from that. Conversely, look, I've loved Ride a Comet. I'm not sure that I necessarily think at this level the 1-turn mile is ideal, although he is 2 for 2 at Woodbine. So he's not one that I'm totally ready to throw out just yet. I think barring something funny, and I got to watch the tape, I've loved Avies Flatter from the moment he debuted. Maybe he's not this good, but I think he has the ability to stay close to the pace. And I'm very curious to see what that little short comment actually looks like on tape, boxed in turn, hung late, because I feel like hung late can be kind of thrown around a little, I don't know, a little bit loosely from time to time where, I don't know, I'll look at a race and go, I didn't think he actually hung. I thought he just got beat by some other horses. So yeah. Avies Flatter is at least one that I'm going to give a good long hard look to. Interesting
long shot who has some figures that would put him there with some of the best of these, and you'll probably get all of that 15-1. I like that idea.
The big thing too, just from looking at the paper, his last 3 races outside of his first 2 career starts are the only 1-turn races of his career, and I think they've been arguably the 3 best so far. So, yeah. As a 5-year-old, maybe he's finally coming into his own.
That's interesting. I mean, I'd be tempted to try to use all of of Olympic Runner and Town Cruise and March to the Arch, but sometimes you just say, what, those other horses aren't going to be. Well, Town Cruise will be, but actually Olympic Runner might be too. It's tough. I could see spreading like crazy here, and just I think one view you could take is I'm going to beat Set Piece and Raging Bull, and you use all those type of horses. I can't quite quit Raging Bull just yet, so I'm going to leave him in the mix. But just one more nice thing to say about Avies Flatter: he will not be positioned too far off the pace, which could be a massive advantage in this spot. And for the same reason that I'm skeptical about those deeper closers, I'm. If I had to do my official picks again, I'd at least sneak Avies Flatter in there on the B line based on looking at this again and everything you're saying.
You can find my official pick on Saturday afternoon on NBCSN because I still have some work to do.
I like it. We'll tune in and we'll check it out. Post time for the 9th race at Woodbine. At Belmont, I got my brain north of the border up with you, my friend. Let's see. What do you think is going to win?
I was between the 11 and the 8, and I know Michael mentioned the 8 Exfiltration. I think that one's got a big chance, but I guess I'll probably land on the 11 Lemon Taffy just because the price is right at 6-1. The 2 turf races, the best races so far. I think this one can be perched just off the pace setter and get first run on everyone.
I like the sound of it. I mean, I thought the favorite was very logical, not necessarily exciting at the 3-1 of the morning line in this spot, but I mean, I suppose technically that would be who I'm picking here, but not a horse I need to go back in and necessarily bet. The 2 Mondeuse just look to me like she might be able to get loose in this mile and a 16th turf affair. I'm looking for Saez to continue the big things he was doing up at Saratoga at this meet. I like that case. I like that case on the 8 as well. Might be worth maybe messing around with some exactas here. I don't know, two with 8 and 11, something like that. See if we can build in a little token play here before they pop the latch for the 9th and final at Belmont on this opening day Thursday. Didn't even mention that opening day at Belmont today.
I wonder if you just get a 2-speed number here. I wonder if your horse goes, I sit just off, and it. Whoever wins, one or the other, was it the 2 or the 3? The 2. Does it come in 2-11, 11-2, something like that? Because outside of those 2, where's where are the forwardly placed types, really?
I'm not seeing much. I mean, Timeform has the 12 getting up into the mix. Mongoose does break nicely. Lemon Taffy's up in the Vanguard, but a little bit of a tricky in-between horses spot. Looks like they're trying to slow things down right away on Mongoose. I might try to get a little separation. Rosario very forward with his Bella Principessa. It always makes me nervous when he's in a forward spot against me, just because he gets so much out of his mounts. If he's allowed to make a run, you don't want to be heads up and down against him in the stretch ever. If it does turn into that 2-speed number type situation. I don't know. I didn't really come up with Bella Principessa in part because I didn't think she'd be positioned that forwardly.
She was also one that I kind of feel like she's nibbled or gotten close, and I just haven't been impressed with them.
Yeah.
I wanted to go with some of the horses I thought maybe had a little bit more upside. And having said that, she's still moving pretty well right now.
Yeah, I mean, she has been in the money in these last few turf starts, and yeah, I'd trade if I could, but to Bella Principessa here with Rosario as the kitchen.
The one is running big.
All right, let's see what the one can do. Yeah, got a nice tip out here, and will be finishing and going to be finishing past them all. I think if can just straighten out a little bit. That's who is that? That's Constitutional Rage.
Yeah,
who I didn't see the 10's coming back a little bit, but I think it's done and dusted. Pace held together. Just this one really nice run from Constitutional Rage. Going back to look, I mean, had been competitive at the level. I guess I just didn't give much credit to that last race. Now looking at it again, seeing that rank early note, seeing wide. Yeah, I mean, this horse, there were things you could point to. Another thing I'll say is just looking at sort of a weird thing, looking at the overall stats for the rail going a mile and a 16th at Belmont. They're not good. It's actually a tricky rail post to negotiate from, but hey, the trip certainly worked out that time. And in the end, Constitutional Rage under Lescano ends up being kind of much the best. I'm gonna have to say. Mongoose goes away very tamely in the end, and Rosario and Bella Principessa hang on for yet another minor award. She'll break her maiden when she meets the right field, I would think.
Yes, I mean, she's run well enough in these races, although there is that part of me that looks at it and says this is kind of what she is now. Like, you go through her this will be her 4th turf start. She's going to have 2 seconds and 2/3. I'm going to venture a guess that the fig is going to be close to that, between a 55 and a 60, because it's where she kind of lives. If she finds the right field, but I think it'll take, all the stars aligning, and she's probably going to keep getting bet because she at least hits the board. She keeps cash and checks for her connections.
Hits the board and has that speed that attracts.
Yeah.
I mean, it gives her the ability to make her own trip, but it also becomes something obvious that people bet. Yeah, not one that I'm excited to bet back, but one that I acknowledge is going to probably win when she catches the right group. And we'll see,
very
when that
so.
is. So let's go and we'll take a pre-look at the leaderboard just to see. Mark Wilgard had 58 going in. That's going to get him up. Into the exacta there. That nice pick of Constitutional Rage. So there's a fun thing. I should have mentioned this before. If you now go to the HorsePlayer Happy Hour leaderboard, we finally, thanks to our man Dave Vader, have the little asterisks by the people who have qualified for the playoffs via the exacta. So we can now see where those, whatever it is, you can count the dots. We're going to have 80 people in the finals total. So you can count the dots, see how many people are already in. 2 more will get in next week. But then the other spots, until we get a field of 80, will go to the tour finishers with the most points who haven't finished in the exacta. So there are going to be a ton of people drawing live. You might be able to get anywhere in the top 10 next week and push yourself into where that cut line is. I'll do a little bit of work on this, and we'll set up that story, maybe on social media or on the podcast early next week, so we can really establish where these cut lines are. But there's going to be a whole lot of people. If you've had 1/3 or 2/6 or something, you're going to be in a better position than you think to get in via the tour in this last week. I'm hoping we can really blow it up. I'm pleased with the 170 number that we got today, but I'm hoping we can hit 200 for the last week of the regular season, and then hopefully we're going to keep everything going. So my idea, Matt, I think we've talked about this, is to have actual BC qualifiers going on in the background during the playoffs. So we'll have 2 contests to cover. We'll give out a bunch more Breeders' Cup Betting Challenge seats and just promote the hell out of everything. And, hopefully it's not in conflict with some existing plan that our friends at Breeders' Cup or Horse Players have. And we can just punch a whole lot of tickets as we ramp up for what I know you agree with me is the most exciting contest of the year.
Yeah, I've really over the past week or so tried to ramp up my opportunities, knowing that we're getting down to the bitter end to try to get in. I fed in on back-to-back days or 2 out of 3 days into the $500 qualifiers and just couldn't get anything going. I joked with my wife. I said, if I performed as well in the actual qualifier as I have in some of the feeders early on, I would max out my seats every year. And unfortunately, it doesn't work out that way. So still got a little bit of time. But yeah, the clock is definitely ticking.
All right, good stuff there. Just waiting for this leaderboard to become official, and then we will call this edition of Horse Players Happy Hour. Thank you, everybody, for your support. If you have a last-second question here, go ahead, hit us up. We'll attempt to answer it if I can get out of full screen mode. Okay, there we go. Horse Tickets makes the point about Ride a Comet being 4 for 4 at Woodbine and 4 for 13 everywhere else. I do think Woodbine, with its galloping configuration, it is a horse for course track. So, I get it. I can't get my head around the trip that's going to get Ride a Comet to the winner's circle, but I'm not going to argue with anybody who lands in that direction. Any thoughts on the Native Trail or Spiral? Did you see their races? Is that stuff going on at Churchill on Saturday, maybe, that I haven't looked at yet?
Could not tell you.
I think so. We will have Churchill coverage on the network with Nick Tamaro and a special guest on the In the Money Plus side. We've got loads of free content over at inthemoneypodcast.com. But if you want more, we have extra stuff, including little digests of all the picks on the late week show. If you go to inthemoneypodcast.com/plus, we heard a rumor, Matt, that you were playing some golf up there in Woodbine. Do you have your tee times all sorted out?
No, I do have sticks with me though. And now it's a matter of, am I going to try to squeeze something in tomorrow morning or Monday morning before my flight back home, or a combination of the two? So, but no, I don't have anything set just yet. So I'm going to have to hustle a game here.
All right, let's run through our winners for the Exacta. Daniel Edwards and Mark Wilgard. Claps to them. Look forward to seeing you in that 80-runner contest we're going to be doing, not next week, but over the course of the following 4 weeks, to allow to award an additional Breeders' Cup Betting Challenge seat. Then Daniel Edwards, David McCarty, Terrence Severinson, Howard Johnson, Don Marquardt, Michael Salakis, David Zaretsky, and Mark Henderson. And then 7 more who will be playing on the Saturday Breeders' Cup qualifier over at horseplayers.com. They are Michael Domable. Thanks again to him for his time today. Norman Pearson, Robert Childress, Stephen Dudenoth, Ernest Hay Jr., Dan Sukup, Mike Herbert, and that's it. Todd Van Dree sitting as our unlucky bubble person today, but hopefully he's had luck in other tournaments, and hopefully will continue to do good things when we see his name on the leaderboard next week. Any closing thoughts, Matt, before we send this one home?
No, looking forward to a good weekend of racing up here. Again, you can check it out both days, Saturday, Sunday on NBCSN. And look, punching tickets to the Breeders' Cup. This is the nitty gritty. We've only got it. About 6 weeks left until the Breeders' Cup, somewhere thereabouts. So,
is that all it is?
Yeah, yeah, we are down to the bitter end here, and looking forward to seeing how these fields continue to shape up. I think it's going to be a really fun few days out at Del Mar at the beginning of November. So we'll see which horses punch their ticket.
Let's do it. Thank you so much, Matt Bernier. Thanks, Michael Domable. Thank you, producer AJ. Thank you, Haley Amos. Thank you, Justin McDonald. Thank you, Dave Vader. Thank you to all of our friends at the Breeders' Cup and horseplayers.com. Love doing these shows, which are a production of the Breeders' Cup and In the Money Media. On our side, our business manager is Drew Coatney. Our chief creative officer is Jonathan Kinchin, who will be back in the fold for our playoffs, at least via video, or so he tells me. And he's usually true to his word about this stuff. I'm Peter Thomas Fornatow. May you win all your photos. The remote's not working.